Somebody's responsible, somebody got to pay, but nothing's going to happen. I feel that nothing's going to happen, nothing ever happens, and they're just going to get away with it.
Tony Paris, one of the 3 men wrongly convicted of the 1988 murder of Cardiff woman Lynette White, has died. Mr Paris, Yusef Abdullahi and Stephen Miller, who became known as the Cardiff Three, were jailed in 1990 but cleared at the Court of Appeal. The real murderer, Jeffrey Gafford, was convicted in 2003. On Sunday, Mr Paris' family confirmed he had died, aged 65. His daughter said she would continue to raise awareness and fight for those who face injustice. She tweeted, "I can't believe I'm writing this. My dad, Anthony Tony Paris, has sadly passed. Anyone who knows me knows my dad is everything to me. It was me and him against the world. I will continue to raise awareness and fight for those who face injustice in his name. I love you, Daga." A subsequent inquiry into the original investigation led to the UK's biggest ever police corruption trial. 8 former South Wales police detectives were found not guilty when the trial collapsed midway through due to disclosure failings. The campaign to free the men by the Buttown community gained international recognition. Campaigners raised particular concerns over the way a confession was taken from Ms. White's boyfriend, Steve Miller. The campaign gained momentum, and 2 years after the 3 were sentenced, the Court of Appeal ruled that a gross miscarriage of justice had taken place. In 1992, the convictions of the 3 jailed men were quashed and they were freed. Mr Paris lost his father just weeks before he was freed by the appeal court in 1992. Mr Abdullahi died in 2011, aged 49. Last year, former Chief Constable of South Wales Police, Matt Jukes, said the men should be recognised as victims and he was sorry for the effect on their lives. The story of the Cardiff Three is told in the 3 episodes documentary.
This is a 5-hander murder trial. We never witnessed anything like this before.
The day they sent us to Swansea Crown Court, I said to Ronnie, we got big problems. We got bigger problems now going to Swansea.
The police certainly made a meal of taking them to court.
You got all these police in their cars, like we was IRA. Do you know what I mean? Like we were some crazy terrorists.
Say like this. Crushed up. With your hands behind your back. They had police helicopters flying over.
The trial was moved from Cardiff to Swansea. The authorities feared that it would be difficult to find a jury who would be unaffected by the incident. The supporters of the defendants felt that the jury bluntly would have been whiter.
There are parts of Wales where there is no black people living there. They had never seen anybody black.
They put it in Swansea for a better chance for a conviction. There's one white girl who's dead. We're all black.
That's like taking a case to Texas. 5 black guys in Texas. They're all going to hang.
Basically, the feeling was that they were guilty.
I think the general media opinion was that they must be the right people because the South Wales Police said so.
My team and I were dedicated to the task, and I think at the end of the day, we knew that the answer lied somewhere there in the docks.
I think generally there was a feeling that this isn't really about us. This isn't about the life that most people in South Wales lived.
Anybody happy?
9 QCs involved in this trial, 5 for the defence, 2 for the prosecution. Mr Justice McNeill, the judge, has already warned the jury that it will be a long trial.
A million times I've seen this place in my nightmares, you know. It's kind of emotional, actually, being down here. And this was our cell. This is our cell. This is where we were. It was the middle cell. You know, the first day in the court was really, really, really daunting, you know? Scary.
The defendants. They came across as menacing, as dark.
This is where we sat. This was my seat. I think I owned this one.
As I understand it, the police had been after John Actie for some time. John Actie was a big boy. He had a reputation as an enforcer.
Yusef Abdullahi sat next to me there. Ronnie, my cousin, sat here.
The police were after Abdullahi. They knew he was very active with Class A drug supply, and they had concerns about Ronnie.
This is Tony's seat.
Tony Paris was a very low-level shoplifter.
And this was Stephen Miller's seat.
Stephen Miller was from London. He was in Cardiff with his brother, and I think the police thought that they were part of a Yardie gangster invasion. They were all involved in criminality to a certain extent.
Every officer who worked on this case deserves special mention. But I particularly want to name my deputy on it, Detective Superintendent Ken Davis.
I remember Ken Davis, who, whilst bouncing a squash ball off the side of the court wall, was saying that irrespective of whether John Actie was guilty or not, he had done enough that was wrong in the past, and that it was coming home to roost.
The police were trying to intimidate the boys in the dock. The tension was just unbelievable.
They were senior ranking coppers, these would be standing over by there, and they'd be calling me, "You black bastard, you nigger, you're going down, you're getting life." Basically like that every day. Murderer. You know, what can you do? There's nothing you can do. You're senior ranking officers. What can you do?
I was frightened because I was thinking to myself, well, what the everything that I got myself into? The place was just compact with so much people. I looked at Dalla, because Dalla was next to me on the right-hand side. I looked at him and said, Dalla, look at the clouds. And he looked up. The Guildhall is really high roofs, but glass, so you could see the skyline. The clouds came. I mean, it was eerie. Dalla, he just looked at me. He said, Steve, we know exactly how they operate. He says that this has been going on for generations.
There we go, thank you.
I'm Peter Solomons. I was a reporter for BBC Wales. The prosecution opening was extraordinary. A ritual killing, 5 men standing around a young woman, each passing this 5-inch long knife and systematically stabbing her.
In opening the prosecution case, David Elfer QC said that the 20-year-old prostitute had been murdered on St. Valentine's Day 2 years ago.
In all prosecutions, the prosecutor has to fill the jury in about the background of the case that's relevant. This gives the prosecutor an opportunity to colour and exaggerate the tale in order to soften the jury up.
The docks area of Cardiff was described in court as a place where people live on the outskirts of society and where knives are worn as part of the clothing.
Elfer QC referred, and I paraphrase, to the docks being so different, the lifestyle being so different from the ordinary way of life that the jury occupied.
David Elfer said it was like an upside-down world. When we go home from work, he said, they get up and go to clubs. Then, when we get up to go to work, they return home to sleep.
He just wanted them to make us out as though we're robbers, we're killers, we're drug dealers, we're rapists.
There were people from Butetown in the public gallery at the time, clearly not a description that they recognised.
I thought it was shameful, really, for him to say what he said, because at the end of the day, if he'd never been there or he'd never been involved with the community, how could he have an opinion? And I thought, I feel sorry for people like you, because you're people who judges, you know, a book by its cover, and you must never do that because you don't know what's in the book.
What he was doing was perpetuating a myth that was about Butetown, and he was selling that myth to people who didn't know, didn't understand, and as white people growing up in Swansea would probably not be aware of their own racism.
Elfer was trying to show the jury that they, the defendants, are animals.
Well, they were all white. The jury were all white. There weren't any black or Asian or any other ethnic minorities whatsoever in that jury panel. We felt that it was unfair, but judges in those days just wouldn't listen to those arguments.
David Elfer, QC prosecuting, said that 20-year-old Lynette White was horrifically murdered. He said she'd been stabbed so many times in the chest, her shirt had become like lace. Her throat had been cut virtually from ear to ear.
As part of his explanation of what happened, there were photographs shown to the jury. I could see on the faces of the jurors they were visibly moved when they saw them. I actually saw them myself, and in life there are some images that you can't unsee once you've
Oh, but anybody listening to a description of her injuries and how she died would have been traumatised, and if that was a member of your family, then that would have been unbearable.
Obviously, it was terrible and tragic, but as a story, it was very compelling.
Lynette White was 20 years old. She was well known in the docks area of Cardiff and worked as a prostitute.
It's been told that the 20-year-old prostitute had her throat cut before being stabbed nearly 60 times.
White's body was discovered on Valentine's Day in the Dockland flat she used for her wretched trade.
And I just get very upset about the way that the media portrayed her. That she prostituted herself was not all that she was.
She had a good heart, do you know what I mean? She's a nice person, do you know what I mean? That, people who don't know Lynette, they can't judge her because she's on the street. Do you know what I mean? You don't judge somebody in the street. She's my partner. I loved her. I wanted to do the right thing by her. I mean, I remember her smile because she had a certain way of her.
Well, she was in school with my daughter, Lynette White, and she would have been the same age as my daughter now, 54, which is sad when I look at my daughter because she's got children, grandchildren. She obviously missed out on all that.
Very well. Because I'm Lynette's boyfriend. I'm Lynette's boyfriend, sure enough, right? But I wasn't reaching out. The whole week, I was looking for her.
Put in court, you have been placed at the scene of the murder.
Okay.
You've been placed at the scene of the murder with a number of other people.
Yeah. And you cannot possibly have witnesses like we've got who can be in collusion. I mean, they are saying things, and the whole jigsaw puzzle is suddenly dropping the place.
The essence of the story was that Miller was looking for Lynette White to sort out either a drugs issue or a money issue with her, and that these men were with him when they went into the flat in order to sort her out. That's the case. And to show that the men were in the flat, Gelfer started in calling the evidence of Violet Perriam.
She was the first person who put John Actie at the scene on the night of the murder.
She happened to be driving past and exclaimed that she saw black men outside James Street and purported to recognise somebody that matched the bill of John Actie.
Now, she knew John Actie, but then she went on to say, but she didn't see his face.
And we take the story up with a knocking on the door leading to the flat.
There were two witnesses who the police heavily depended upon to give evidence, and that was Mark Gromick and Paul Atkins. Atkins was a visitor, but Mark Gromick occupied a flat above Lynette White's. And apparently on that night it was alleged that the boys came to bang on the door and Gromick went and threw keys out of the window,
allowing them free entry up the stairs leading to the flat that Lynette White was in.
And then there was Angela Pasila and Leanne Vilde.
Leanne Vilde and Angela Pasela were also prostitutes who lived near the flat where Lynette was killed.
Now, they were staying in another flat, which was quite a distance away.
Leanne Vilde said she'd heard screams coming from the flat.
They made their way across, they claimed, and they walked into the setting.
Leanne has described the scene She describes herself, obviously, standing near the window by her head. Now then. She describes the other two as being by the body.
I think John Actie was on the stairs. I ran into the living room, followed by Angela. In the room was Ronnie Actie, and Della was standing a few feet away. John Actie came in behind us. I saw Tony Parrish standing over Lynette, stabbing her in a downward motion.
Oh my God. There is no words to explain how that feels. You're so angry.
John put the knife to my throat and he told me to cut her wrists because I had seen too much.
It's untrue. It never happened. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. That's what we were saying. Do you know what I mean? Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Stephen took the knife off Angela and told me to take the knife and cut Lynette's throat.
Leanne says that you were standing there and that you stabbed Lynette. It was like bam in your face. Why is she saying this about me? Why?
John then said, there'll be a couple more murders if the police hear about it.
The prosecution were asking the jury to believe that 5 black men would have behaved in that way. You wouldn't have found 5 white men in that position.
At one point in the prosecution case, they talked about foreign blood being there at the scene. Not blood that belonged to any of the 5 accused, but someone else, not Lynette White's. So, whose blood was this?
And there was absolutely no forensic evidence linking any of the defendants with the murder of Lynette White.
I remember thinking, if you haven't got forensic evidence, that's a pretty big hole in your case.
I'm going to refer to a statement, a witness statement, that is, from a girl. Her name is Angela Pasila. She heard somebody knocking on the door of her flat. She says that she answered the door, and outside the door was standing Stephen Miller.
Angela Pasila was such a reluctant witness that she actually had to be virtually dragged into court.
She was so rude. Oh, she was rude beyond belief.
And we were sitting here and we couldn't do nothing. We just had to take it.
I have a transcript of some of her evidence here, and she's asked, who was in that room at that time? And here Angela Pasila replies, the 5 monkeys you have got sitting in the dock. Tell us what you mean by monkeys, she's asked. She replies, well, what are they? Are they men that will go and kill an innocent girl? They are not bloody men. This is what they bloody are. They are all the fucking same, these docks people.
It hurts, man. I can't describe how it feels because I got a mother and I got a father and I got brothers and sisters who got to listen to this madness.
Like, still remember it. Them 5 black monkeys murdered Lynette White.
The judge interrupts at this point and says, "Is monkey a slang phrase on the docks, Mr. Evans?" And then Ronnie Actie, one of the defendants, says, "No, sir." The judge chips in. "Is the word monkey sometimes used in the docks for a half-caste?" Ronnie Actie says, "No, sir."
It don't even make you feel human, like in the human race.
She's asked, "Who put the knife to your throat?" "One of your monkeys did."
Even though the words used are racist, monkey and so on, I didn't at the time, and I don't now take them as racist from her, because she was and is so limited. She had a low IQ. I quite frankly think they were the first words that came out of her mouth when she was caught out in relation to her lies.
You know, the police were sitting there laughing. It's like they told her what to do, to say, well, if you're in difficulty, just call them names. They didn't care. No one cared.
I think the evidence of Angela Pasile was absolutely pivotal to the prosecution case. She stood up in the court. She spoke very disparagingly about the 5 men in the dock, but she said that she saw those men murder Lynette White. Call me old-fashioned. You expect them to stand up there and tell the truth. And for a jury to disregard that would have been pretty extraordinary.
It's all lies. When I got called to give evidence, I had a panic attack. They had to get the doctor out for me.
So the 5 defendants were cross-examined for more than 4 weeks. They all so vehemently denied murdering Lynette.
When I stood in the dock and gave evidence, I told them I wouldn't walk down fucking James Street with those other boys are talking about. They might go and kill somebody with them.
And then I'm telling the jury how me and the police didn't get on. All the time I said this. The police fitted me up. I told you this, I told them that in the Crown Court. It was just bullshit. It was fabricated, made up by South Wales Police.
I know what I had alibi. I know I didn't do nothing. So I told the jury what I said in the interview is bullshit.
Yusef Abdullahi said he was working on a boat called the Coral Sea.
We know we got you in here because you murdered Lynette White along with others.
I was on a Coral Sea.
That's why you're in here.
I was on a Coral Sea.
You weren't on the Coral Sea working all that Saturday night.
All the witnesses gave cast iron evidence that Yusef was on the boat and worked there all night.
We wanted the case to stop, for the judge to throw it out. But then things, took a turn for the worse.
The trial was coming to an end. The prosecution had made their case. There'd been cross-examination of all the witnesses. The defence had gone through their case. Then the judge, Mr Justice McNeill, was summing up the whole proceedings to the court and the jury. One morning, I got a call saying, "You're not going to believe this.
The judge dropped dead.
News of Sir David McNeil's death was announced to the court this morning. Before the jury was discharged, tributes were paid to the judge. We wondered whether the new judge would pick up from that point, or whether there would be a whole new trial with all the time and expense that would involve. As it turns out, it was to be a new trial.
Meanwhile, you've still got 5 defendants in custody.
You know, we had to sit through that again. Basically, we were treated like animals, like slaves. It was fucking horrible. You know, people are thinking that you've done it. It was a racial thing. South Wales police were looking for a white guy. So why the fuck is it 5 black guys? You're a complete wreck. I don't know how many nervous breakdowns I had.
I got no words, I can't even speak about how bad it was and what they'd done and how they'd done it. Tried to take my life, man. If I was weak, I would have fucking known myself.
You have to go through that for a whole year in court, in and out, listening to the whole same old bullshit. Oh, wow.
The defendants were agitated. They had to stay in custody. There's no question of them being allowed bail or anything like that in a case like this. Traditionally, second trials or retrials never go as well as the first one because there's been a rehearsal. We were in a very difficult position.
The defence needed to undermine Vilde and Pasila and their evidence. And so attempts were made to show that they were lying.
They were put forward by the prosecution as credible witnesses. But the evidence they gave in their initial statements was quite different to the evidence they actually gave at the trial. They were cross-examined about those statements by the defence.
They told differing events at the second trial. They couldn't get any element straight. In their statements, they named other people who weren't even charged as being there. The pressure they must have been placed under, because of course they were being taken to police stations time and time again on repeated days and relentlessly interviewed without legal representation until they came up with the version of events that the police were happy with.
To make matters even more confusing, the defence produced a letter in court written by Leanne Vilde to a friend, claiming that she'd lied to the police.
She said, if I would have said what I've been saying for 10 months, which honest to God is the truth, I would have been in the dock with them for the murder, Nicky. So I've lied to the police just so I could have got out of the police station. Nicola, I was scared to death. I just can't believe that the boys in prison are the right ones.
You know, she was telling everyone exactly what the police have done to her. They had to agree with the police. Can you imagine? They got no family. The police are picking them up when they wanted to, taking them whenever they want. It was intimidating for us. And we got family, we got support. Them people ain't got no support.
Vilde and Basilo, both prostitutes. They fitted in with the playbook that had been created by the police of how this may have happened. That they had to find weak, vulnerable, suggestible people who would be susceptible to threats. But again, the problem was Stephen Miller's confession.
Which kind of undermined any attempt one would have to suggest that Vilde and Basilo were lying.
It's incredibly difficult to get over a confession. It's the most difficult thing to convince a jury that somebody would admit to a serious crime that they haven't actually committed.
I am DC Peter Greenwood. Also present is Detective Constable John Seaford. I am interviewing Stephen Wayne Miller.
The defence wanted the confession from Miller ruled out. They said that he wasn't in a fit mental state to put up with the weight of police questioning during what was an interrogation.
I wish to do so, but what you say may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
Well, I understand, yeah. Right.
Confessions were terribly important in the 1970s and 1980s. So the focus was on confession, getting confessions, not necessarily getting the truth. I had seen cases where people had been pressured and coerced, but you didn't necessarily have evidence. In the cases of the Guildford 4 and the Birmingham 6, and I saw all of those. There was no proper recording. Whatever the Guildford 4, Birmingham 6 said probably wouldn't be believed. But when you actually have a tape, a tangible account, you can hear, you couldn't see it, but you could hear what was going on in the interview.
And in the last month or so, we've seen people who we've always thought were crucial witnesses in this case. As a result of that, we don't believe that certain people are responsible for the murder of Lynette.
It left a lasting impression on me because it was the distress in Stephen Miller's voice.
One of those people we think is involved in the murder of Lynette is yourself.
Myself. I don't care what nobody say, I was not there. As far as I'm concerned.
There were 19 tapes of interviews over about 5 days. There were 12 hours and 40 minutes in total. And you could see how the pressure was just building up gradually from interview 1, built up by a team of nice officers who kind of befriending him and were softly spoken.
We had a quick chat outside, and we thought, you have got something to tell us. It's there, you want to tell us, but something's stopping you for some reason.
The good guys, so to speak, manipulating him, building on the trust that they had with him, to the aggressive interviewers who were challenging him aggressively and shouting at him. And when I started listening to 7, the shouting and the screaming, and I'd never heard anything like that.
Oh, you could sit there and say that, being in that room, seeing that girl there in the state she was in, and you were supposed to have had all this wonderful care for her, seeing her damn head hang off, and her arms cut and stabbed to death.
wasn't there.
You were there that
I wasn't
night.
there.
Together with all the others, you were there that night.
All the way through, I says, I don't know what you're talking about. I was not there. I kept saying I was not there. Locked me on cell for about an hour. And they bring me back into the cell and they question me again. They just kept driving me and beating me with this. It's like I was getting assaulted.
Stephen Miller, at an age of 75, he was extremely suggestible, and it was easy for the police to manipulate his trust in his own memory. So after the hammering in interview 7, in interview 8, when the nice people came in, he then admitted that perhaps he had been there.
Now, up to your eyeballs in drugs and drink, it seems like a good idea. They take it a bit too far. They do take it a bit too far. And then they say, come here, see what we've done for you.
You can be right. You just can be right.
We think we probably are.
Yeah.
We think we probably are. You're agreeing with us, you know. I mean, you've got no reason to doubt.
But as I said,
You
that
can't
I was
say.
salvage, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
You're so out of it, you're off your box. I mean, you've been honest with us. We think it's marvellous, you know. We've got...
What you have there is somebody who seems to be able to provide you with an explanation as to why you don't remember being at the crime scene at the time. Is a technique that American interrogators often use to undermine people's memory. You were on drugs.
You could have been stoned at your head, Stephen.
You're boozed up, you're up to your eyeballs with drugs, and you're talking to your mates. Can you see this now? Yeah. So it's quite possible that later, en masse, all down to number 7, into the flat, they might have sorted it. I'm not saying you did.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I said. I'm far as I'm saying, right? I might have been there. I think I was there.
This piece of interview is crucial because then Mr. Miller starts admitting that maybe he was in the room.
Would you describe it as a frenzied attack?
What do you mean, friends?
Was he now beyond himself? Was he now acting like a madman?
I would say so, yeah.
You saw him stab your girlfriend about 15 times,
Yeah.
and you ran away.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
That's
isn't
the gospel truth. The gospel
it?
truth.
You ran away.
Yeah.
So the story is developing. And then in interviews 18 and 19, he admits that he actually did some stabbing.
I think you can remember whether you stabbed Lynette or not.
I don't remember.
I think you can. I think you can. And I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me if you were forced to do it. I want you to tell me if you did it of your own accord, but did it out of fear. I want you to tell me now.
Okay, I don't know.
Everything else is clear to you, apart from one little bit.
That's what I said. I don't know. I might have done. I might have done.
It is a horrific process because he is persuaded he's a murderer. My final conclusion, I'll read it out. There is no doubt in my mind that bearing in mind the type, intensity and duration of the police pressure, the reliability of the content of the interviews must be considered to be unsafe and unsatisfactory. Anyway, the judge did not seem particularly impressed with my evidence because he thought Stephen Miller clearly wasn't very suggestible. So he ruled the interviews in. In the summing up before the jury, the trial judge refers to a comment by the prosecutor that Good Johnson, he is in a cloud cuckoo land. Cloud cuckoo land. It's insulting.
The combination of the prosecution witnesses, together with a confession, was extremely compelling. The defence countered it, but on balance, I thought, sitting there, that there was a pretty good chance that all 5 were going to be convicted of murder.
The judge, Mr Justice Leonard, called all 5 defendants into the court shortly before 5 o'clock. The dock was cleared apart from Stephen Miller, Lynette White's boyfriend.
Stephen Miller stood in the dock, and the judge asked the jury for their verdict.
The verdict? Guilty.
Guilty. I mean, I just looked at the thing, I started swearing at them. I just fell at the judge and I sweared at the thing, and I just walked downstairs. I came downstairs, took my blazer off, and I just flung it on the floor. Screaming! Burst out crying.
Then it was Anthony Paris's turn.
There's no way they'll find me guilty. I'm still thinking justice will prevail.
The jury foreman again announced a guilty verdict.
When they said guilty, well, I don't know what happened to me. All I know is I didn't faint. I just stood off the chair and I thought, oh my God, what have they done?
I'm not going home. I'm going to fucking jail for life. I couldn't believe it. I just stuck to the rails. And they tried to move me, and they can't move me because I wouldn't move. I just turned to the jury and I said, obviously, find me guilty. Took me down the stairs. Can't be happening. This is... But it is happening. And it's happening to me.
So 2 of the men had been convicted of murder. We turned up the next morning expecting that the other 3 would follow the same course.
The jury had been deliberating for 20 hours when asked by the judge if they'd reached a verdict on any of the 3 remaining defendants. The jury foreman said they had on Ronnie Actie. When asked for the verdict, the foreman said not guilty.
The court erupted. Ronnie Actie himself, it seems as if he couldn't believe he'd been acquitted.
I've been put in jail for 2 years for a crime I did not commit. I don't know anything about. And John Actie is innocent. John Actie is innocent. They're all innocent. All of them are innocent.
Tony and Stephen Miller had already been found guilty. Ronnie had been found not guilty. So you can imagine, you know, the feeling inside you, is it going to be a guilty or is it going to be a not guilty? You just don't know. You know, it's very hard. It's very difficult, you know, knowing you could go at the top of them stairs there and you could get a guilty and get a life sentence for something you know nothing about, you know.
Firstly, the judge called Yusef Abdullahi into the dock.
And I'm standing down here. Yusef was up there. I heard, how would you find Yusef Abdullahi?
The jury foreman was then asked for the verdict. He said guilty.
And you could hear the cock, you know.
There were screams from the public gallery, and Abdullahi turned to the jury and said,
"You've taken my life away from me. I'm an innocent man." And then they brought him back down.
Outside the court, Abdullahi's brother spoke about the sentence.
It was proved to be on a boat on the Coral Sea in Barry. It was proved by 13 witnesses to be there.
How do the family feel now?
What do you mean how do the family feel? Is that justice?
And then they called me. Now, we've just had a guilty. Could you imagine how I'm feeling to get up these stairs for my verdict? You know, it wasn't good.
John Actie was then brought to the dock.
It was a very journey to get up them stairs, you know. All the police was lined up all along here. There's like a guard, you know, just in case of trouble. And then I come here, and this is where I stood, right here. The clerk asked the jury their verdict, and not guilty. And it just echoed. Everything echoed round you. Not guilty. Not guilty. Not guilty. Not guilty. You know, and it took a while to come across to me, you know, and then it was, and then my brothers and family and everyone just dragged me out of there. Everyone's screaming, everyone's jumping. There's police, they're all angry, you can see their faces, dragging me out of here. They all got their hands around me. I'm feeling freedom. Seeing Tony, Dulla, Stephen Miller in jail, they're innocent guys, you know. What could we do? Just tell the world it was innocent, you know.
They wanted to just put innocent. Palace is innocent. They're innocent. My feelings, I am bitter, I am broke. I wasn't home to my family.
There was some crying, there was smiling, you know, and there I was, going home. It was lovely. It was a nice feeling.
The prosecution had painted it very much as the five acting together, but it was very strange because you had the three being found guilty and the two being found not guilty.
The only possible explanation is that the jury, quite improperly and contrary to the direction of the judge, relied upon the Miller confession tapes.
Fuck you, innocent, man. Fuck you, set up. Set me up, bro. Fucking justice be done, don't worry.
How
was it that the 4 primary prosecution witnesses had turned up in court and told those terrible lies? What possible motive would they have? What's the other explanation? The other explanation is that effectively this was a police stitch-up.
Does Roger tell you where we going, boys?
On the last day, some get a heavy lunch. John Williams at 52 says this suits him best. He starts a new career as a private crime consultant. There's a lot of it out there, he says. The villains mustn't get away.
There was one strange thing. Police told the media that Lynette's name was spelled without an E on the end. And in fact, there's an E on the end. It was a very minor, if you like, example of how Lynette was misportrayed.
I can remember this crew, this PO saying to me, don't worry, Tom, just be yourself. You'll be okay. Looked at him, and he fucking out a laugh. I gotta go up there and black Welsh, small in the English jail. Oh, I was scared.
I said, what are we going to do? And Malik was just, we're going to have to make a campaign. Me and Lloydie and you, all of us, all of our families have to get together and sort it out.
It can't stop. I couldn't go to bed knowing my brother was in there innocent.
Would you say that this presence is inflammatory outside the prison?
Well, I think that if prayer is inflammatory, then you got to take it up with Jesus, not me.
The hope was just small. I could just about look, just about see a little light.
The police picked on the wrong fucking family, as simple as that. They should have picked on my lot.
Nobody's saying the person who didn't kill this girl shouldn't go in jail. But put the right person in there.
They will fight till doomsday for it to get out.
No, this is just the beginning. You